Well, Kevin, we're back again. We're doing an interview. You've just come off of your keynote upstairs at the session, and the Smart Grid's well underway, and I'm glad you're taking some time out of the event here to come spend some time and talk with me for a minute or two.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the time.
Great. So just for the benefit of the audience, this is Kevin Suitor, VP of Corporate Communications, or Corporate Marketing.
Marketing.
For Redline Communications in Toronto. And we're not far away location-wise, being based in Toronto myself. And we're running the Smart Grid Summit here, as you know, and we're very happy that you could attend our first summit and, in fact, be a sponsor, which is just great. And let's talk a little WiMAX. I know it's high on your mind. You've just been talking about it to the audience this morning. So maybe just to set the stage, tell us a little bit about why WiMAX in utilities. Why should these two things come together?
So what we see is that WiMAX gives us a confluence of this ability to take wireless technology, apply standards to it through WiMAX, the WiMAX 802.16 standard, overlay that with IP and Ethernet and Unix type technologies, and start to put together the what I call the holy trinity of networking.
Okay.
This ability to get standard wireless, talking to standard-based protocols, to standards-based computing, have a nice common thread running all the way through it. We think there's a lot of applicability in the smart grid for using WiMAX where you can't get fiber and perhaps your copper facilities aren't sufficient.
Okay. Now, standards has been a big theme so far today in the summit. Coming out of the telecom world, as I am, and coming out of the wireless world as you are, we understand what standards means. But I'd have to say that the utility space probably looks at that concept a little differently. What's been your experience?
Yeah, I agree. I took down a real alphabet soup worth of standards referrals in this morning's sessions.
Yes.
It seems like the utilities haven't met a telecom standard they liked, and they want to look at them and tear them apart and put them back together again. So it's sort of like a little bit of a Lego.
Yeah. It definitely is I wouldn't call it a battleground, but it's certainly this unresolved space that we would like to see them address, because I think the telecoms have learned their lessons and gone through this process, and the utilities are going down that same path whether they like it or not, and they may do it their way, but they may do it with some help.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as I said in my keynote, there are 12 enterprise systems that get touched. Those enterprise systems are very akin to the system you see in a banking environment, an insurance environment. You'd see it inside the telecom environment itself to run the back office of a telephone company.
Yes.
So, there's a lot of these facilities that have been put together. This has been baked before.
Well,
it's not necessarily new art, and it's not black art.
Right, but then the RF mesh is what utilities typically use today. Is that right?
We see a lot of use of Zigbee technology for home area networking, Wi-Fi for aggregation, and now what we're seeing is CDMA technology. If you look at a third-party backhaul, and what we provide, the WiMAX piece, if you're building your own self-built private network, to really bridge that gap between the home and the core network for the public utility.
And just lastly, how far out do you think the utilities are from really making WiMAX sort of a standard that they can really work with? I know you've done some good work in Canada, obviously, with our local utilities, and that's proven that it works, right? But for the U.S. utilities, how far out do you think they are?
I think the U.S. utilities have one significant challenge, and that is they lack the ability to have a dedicated piece of spectrum like we have in Canada to deploy safely this new public utility. Right? I mean, the smart grid is really an overlay to an existing wireline technology network, i.e. the power grid. And what the smart grid does is really make it more intelligent. It needs some dedicated spectrum that doesn't exist yet. Today's networks are put together with license-exempt 900 megahertz typically spectrum that's fraught with interference issues. I think there needs to be some spectrum set aside, hopefully 1.8 gigahertz, so that we have a North American-wide spectrum allocation where RF signals and coordination can be dealt with very effectively amongst the North American electric grid providers.
Okay. Well, you're painting a nice picture there, but we're going to have to wait till the January show to see how far along we really are.
Yeah, January will be a good break point. I think that this is not a sprint; it's a marathon.
I agree.
Utility networks were built over, the last 100 years, almost 100 years, 80 years, I guess, roughly here in the U.S. It didn't happen overnight. I don't expect to see the smart grid happen overnight, but I do expect that it will be an area of significant interest to the industry over the next 3 to 8 years. 2014 is probably a good checkpoint year to say how well have we done.
Right. Okay, well, we'll be checking along the way, but for now we've got to wrap up.
Okay, thanks, John.
So you're welcome, Kevin. Okay, and thanks everyone for watching. This is John Arnold of Intelligent Communications Partners. And again, thanks for coming and watching, and we hope you enjoy the Smart Grid Summit as you see it here.